Okay. So Okinistuni Daniku, Terryn Williamson, Amskapi Pikani. Hello, my name is Terryn Williamson, and I am grateful to come from the Blackfeet Nation. I would like to start off by saying thank you to the Little Shell tribe for allowing me to present to you all today. Here is today's presentation agenda. The beginning of the slide will sound repetitive if you watch the previous presentation, but our information and our services haven't changed, so no need to create extra work for myself. So this is the About Me slide. I was born and raised on the Blackfeet Reservation along the Two Medicine River, 12 miles south of Browning, Montana. I'm an enrolled member of the Blackfeet tribe. After graduating high school in 2013, I attended the University of Montana. Due to personal circumstances of a loss, I went back home to Browning. I became a mother in 2015 and decided I will continue my education at the Blackfeet Community College and graduated as a certified nurse's assistant to better provide for my son. My life was not what I had hoped it to be. This realization prompted me to take control and make a positive change by relocating to Butte, Montana, with my cousin's support in January of 2021. I put my caregiving experience to good use by securing a residence aide position at a local nursing home. However, I desired to do more for my new community. I discovered the Butte Native Wellness Center and decided to explore any potential job opportunities. In July of 2021, I landed a position as a medical receptionist, and over time, I transitioned to become a care navigator before ultimately settling in as a cultural specialist as of early 2023. This slide, um, I wanted to post 4 pictures. In the top left corner, what you are looking at is the view of Two Medicine Lake and the mountains that surround it. This image was taken up in Glacier National Park, which is my people's traditional homelands. In the top right corner, this is the Two Medicine River, which is where I grew up swimming and I lived next to my entire life. This is where my family currently lives and have lived many, many years before us. And you can see my son and his dog are swimming in the same river. So this is a generational area where we live. In the lower left corner, here is a view of a sunset from Browning, Montana. This is more closer to the hospital. This is where I grew up and I went to school, and this is where all my childhood friends and all my cousins and all my family live. The reason why I want to incorporate these pictures is because I wanted to give you all a visual from where I come from. Because now in the bottom right corner, this is the place that I currently live, which is Butte, Montana. Here is a list of all the UIOs in Montana. And a UIO is described by the Indian Health Service is a nonprofit corporation located in an urban center with a board of directors, 51% of whom are American Indian or Alaskan Native. Its primary purpose is to establish and manage an urban Indian health program and other associated activities, as outlined in Title V of the Indian Healthcare Improvement Act. There are 41 UIOs across the nation. 5 of those reside in Montana. This slide is for the Butte Native Wellness Center. This is where I currently work at. First, I would like to say with pride, I have witnessed the Butte Native Wellness Center's remarkable growth over the last 2 years. And as our cultural department also accomplished so much in the last 9 months, our team's expansion, along with the growth of various departments, has only strengthened our commitment to better serving the Native community. I'm grateful to be part of the team and for the unwavering support that each member provides. The Butte Native Wellness Center is a certified outpatient clinic serving the American Indian and Alaskan Native communities in Butte, Montana, and the surrounding areas. The clinic provides primary health and wellness services such as mental health, substance abuse recovery, diabetes care, education and prevention, and other primary healthcare essentials. We promote a healthy community for all patients with the goal of improving overall wellness. My job as the Butte Native Wellness Center's cultural specialist is to promote cultural connectedness in an urban environment such as Butte. One way I achieve this is for our patients that we see at the clinic, we offer them a complimentary smudge kit that includes an abalone shell, matches, a small braid of sweetgrass, cedar, sage bundle, and a pinch of ceremonial tobacco, all packaged into a clear box. These boxes are refillable once a month, and if a patient has questions regarding tribal resources, I can also help with that also. We hold different events open to the public that involve storytelling, drumming, and more, including our herbal pharmacy, which I am going to go into more detail. So our herbal pharmacy is made up of 13 different herbs that coincide with Native American culture across the nation. These clippings of herbs consist of sweetgrass, sage, cedar, tobacco, lavender, mint, mullein, bear root, slash osha, pine needles, now replaced with red Indian paintbrush, white flower yarrow, stinging nettle leaves, wild ginger, and wild rose petals. A small tie bag is given to the individual and they can pack their bag however they like, which with whatever herbs they would want. As they're reading the explanation that I have provided for them next to their jars, each herb, I remind them that they should have positive thoughts while handling these herbs because our energy can be transferred and we always want good energy around us. We call these medicine bags because traditionally these herbs are all considered to be good medicine. For right now, our herbal pharmacy is only aromatherapy only. We are currently in the process of implementing a consumption plan such as teas, but we want to have the proper training and thorough research before doing so. So that is in the herbal pharmacy's future. As I mentioned about replacing the pine needles with the red Indian paintbrush, there was a there was a one of our coworkers noticed that the pine needles were rotting and molding, and these pine needles were kept in glass airtight containers. And after weeks, we start to notice that the jars start become cloudy. And upon further investigation, we found what seemed to be mold starting to form. We knew it was from the condensation from the way the pine needles were packaged. So we placed new pine needles in the container and we left the lid off to create an airflow. But again, the pine needles did not want to stop molding. Then we noticed all the pine needles we purchased were spoiled due to mold. I have them now. I'm just waiting for the earth to get a little softer to go back and bury them so we can give them back to Mother Earth. The night that I went home and I was thinking about the moldy pine needles, I was like, oh man, which one should we replace it with? And I was scrolling through Facebook. One of my Facebook friends back home, she mentioned that her family, they picked red Indian paintbrush at her wedding or for her wedding. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's perfect. And double, I made sure that this plant had medicinal properties, just like the rest of the herbs that we currently have. And it does. So that can be discussed in later uh, presentations about the properties that this plant holds. With that being said, I would like to put out a disclaimer about different uses that these plants may have regarding consumption. After doing thorough research, BNWC does not support consumption. We just want to put that out there. How did why was it implemented? So with that question comes another question of how did the herbal pharmacy come to be? A member of our Blackfeet community worked for Zero Suicide, which is a nonprofit organization that focuses on mental and behavioral health. He came to our center and introduced us to using traditional medicine to promote a better well-being. And we thought it was a great idea and it tied perfectly into our clinic that is native centered. I'm so grateful for this individual because he is a positive member of the Blackfeet community and he loves to see native people strive. So our representation of ancestral plants and medicines provide an interactive and hands-on experience with the herbal pharmacy and the medicine bags, but that is also using sanitary precautions in place to ensure safety. These plants carry teachings that have been passed down for generations, originating from indigenous people of this land. Each plant holds a symbolic and sacred meaning, offering a sense of protection and healing. The grounding technique and our herbal pharmacy medicine bags correlate because both practices promote mindfulness and they help reduce negative thoughts and feelings such as anxiety. I personally use my medicine bag when I am feeling stressed or overwhelmed, and it seems to help me take the time to be in the moment and to focus on only the contents of my bag. And the aroma, as I'm kind of like squishing it around, the aroma kind of releases and it it just washes me over like with a sense of calmness. And so I really like to incorporate sweetgrass, sage, and cedar and tobacco into mine because I just like to keep the four sacred herbs with me all the time. And then I also add lavender because it adds that scent of calmness. So who can access the herbal pharmacy? The herbal pharmacy is available to anyone willing to make one. That means that we do not set limitations for who has access, unlike our smudge kits, which are reserved for patients only. Because we do hold public events and get recognized by outside organizations, we believe it is only right to offer these herbs to everyone. Where do we obtain our herbs? As of right now, we order our herbs, preferably local or native owned businesses. All of our herbs get shipped from like Connect Co is based out of Illinois and Meadowlark is based out of Missoula. Magic Brands is in California and Grassroots is in Florida. These are small businesses that are family owned also. And then there's um, Prairie Edge Sioux Trading Post. That is actually located, I want to say it is in Rosebud, South Dakota. Oh no, it's in Rapid City, South Dakota. Sorry. Okay. And they have also been one of our herb suppliers also. We order our OSHA and bear root from them. And they just come in like packages. With that being said, I am currently in the process of learning the proper ways on how to forage our own traditional plants in the surrounding areas. Not only are we gaining knowledge from community of pro gardeners, but also from elders that I have the privilege of learning from back home on the Blackfeet Reservation. If anyone has any resources, sorry. So Here are pictures of one of our herbs that we are featuring for today's presentation. We fashioned them into clippings to make it easier and more accessible for people to make for their medicine bags. Over time, the dried tobacco leaves break down, and I try to mix them around, but they somehow make their way to the bottom again. I blame gravity. Um, and in this slide, I have pictures of our previous cedar and our current cedar. On the left picture is our previous cedar. When we first opened our package, I looked at the cedar bundles and I noticed it didn't have the distinct cedar smell that I know of. And I immediately grew concerned as I unwrapped the packaging, and the cedar leaves were not what I knew cedar was. These leaves were almost like bushy and like spiky and kind of no smell. So I reordered us some flat cedar, specifically flat cedar, and it flat cedar has a smooth texture with a sweet scent smell. I know Lakotas like to use specifically this cedar, but the previous cedar, I want to say, based off of my research and during this presentation, I want to say that this might be Alaskan cedar, but I'm not 100% sure. But it is a different type of cedar. We're going to go into more of that into later in the presentation. So plans moving forward with the herbal pharmacy. The plans moving forward with the herbal pharmacy as our clinic grows as a whole, that gives our cultural department an opportunity to expand as well. Our firsthand experience at gardening this past summer was a successful one. I'll, um, with the relationships we have gained over the past year when it comes to holistic approaches and gardening, we are confident in our decision to not only grow our own herbs, but to be able to forage and gift them to our patients and the community as well. That's more of a future process. But we did have success growing our sweetgrass. Currently, they are dormant and they are outside. Within, I want to say by April, they should be starting to kind of liven up. We're going to watch how that process goes to see how everything falls out, see how our progress goes with the spirit germplasm sweetgrass. Our herbal pharmacy has been such an inspiration to the urban Indian health clinics across the nation, including Denver Indian Health and Family Services. Denver was so influenced by our project that they motivated them to put together their own herbal pharmacy project as well. They introduced the four sacred herbs of sweetgrass, sage, cedar, and tobacco during their pilot launch. We were told of their community's excitement about the medicine bags, and they provided over 130 medicine bags. BNWC was then featured in presentations for the National Council for Urban Indians. We got back in touch with the people down in Denver about the herbal pharmacy, and the one lady explained that she took an aspect look at the Chinese traditional medicine and the Ojibwe aspect also, and she's combining them both. So she has backup information for both, and it is coming along so great. In the next presentation, I want to ask if it's okay if I can show her progress, because I feel like it should be recognized, especially since our herbal pharmacy was the start of it. And maybe we can eventually get up to their level. Okay. So before we begin to discuss the two main topics of today's presentation, which is tobacco and cedar, I would like to first point out that I do not claim, nor do I have any rights to any type of medicine man or woman title. I also want to address that although these plants are considered ceremonial, I will not be going into details about any type of ceremony practices. That's just how I was raised. There are crucial details when it comes to ceremonies that I have no rights to be discussing. What I am going to share with you all is my own knowledge from my upbringing. Information that I have gathered from elders and tribal members from different tribes, and also my own exploration and study of each plant. Thank you. But during this presentation also, I will be telling personal stories and condensed tribal stories about these sacred plants. Butte Native Wellness Center is an urban Indian organization, and we like to be inclusive with all tribes throughout the nation. I find it fascinating learning about other tribes and their customs because it gives me a deeper understanding of how important our connection is with Mother Earth, and I hope you enjoy it as well. So the first plant we're going to be talking about is tobacco. Tobacco is considered to be one of the main four sacred plants to Indigenous people of this land. In the previous presentation, I went over sage and sweetgrass, which are also part of the famous four. Tobacco has over 70 species, and in those are traditional tobacco and commercial tobacco. The commercial kind is um, Negotiana tabacum, but um, there are different 9 species that were used by Native Americans for the traditional tobacco. Amongst the indigenous people, that is the Negotiana rustica. As you can see by the pictures provided, traditional tobacco has yellow flowers and commercial tobacco has pink flowers. This is a characteristic that to differentiate tobacco. The commercial kind is considered a hybrid species. So when I asked my colleagues what's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear tobacco, I received answers such as offering, cigarettes, and prayer, which are all the answers I expected. This is why I have listed both of them, because there is such a vast diversity between the two. Even though they both come from a tobacco plant, um, and I will explain those differences. If you take a second to compare the two diagrams I have here on traditional tobacco and commercial tobacco, they are almost identical compared with these diagrams, except for their scientific names. The characteristics of these plants also play an important role of differentiating them. For instance, the leaves are slightly different shape and color, and both plants have different colored flowers. The leaves on the traditional tobacco plant produce the highly addictive chemical nicotine at 9%, whereas the commercial tobacco plant only produces 1 to 3% of nicotine. Because of the low production of chemical, commercial tobacco is ideal for smoking because inhaling was easier compared to traditional tobacco. Traditional tobacco would be way too harsh to smoke. I have added pictures of some ways commercial tobacco is consumed. This involves cigarettes, chewing tobacco, e-cig or vape. Tobacco was introduced to Europe from the Americas around the 1500s, which led to them smoking it on a much larger scale and causing a demand for it. The reason why I decided to take time to talk about commercial tobacco is because it has not only tarnished the traditional values of Native people's perspective, but it has done significant damage to anyone it comes in contact with. You do not need to um, you do not need to smoke to be affected. You could be standing next to someone, and the secondhand smoke can cause just as much damage as the person smoking it. This is due to the harsh chemicals big tobacco corporations have pumped into these products. Because of these chemicals people are consuming on a daily basis, it has caused a substantial health disparity. According to the World Health Organization and the Food and Drug Administration, FDA, there are three facts about commercial tobacco. These are just three of them, actually. But when I read the highest use, um, when I read American Indians slash Alaska Natives have the highest use of commercial tobacco compared to all other races, um, that is a prime example of how much we were stripped of our culture during colonization because we went from the people respecting this plant the most to the people who disrespect it the most out of every single race. The good news is that we are slowly gaining back our culture. This presentation is an example of how we are doing our part in revitalizing our culture in an educational way. I couldn't talk about the harmful use of tobacco without listing helpful resources for quitting. American Indian Commercial Tobacco Quit Line and also the Montana Tobacco Quit Line are good resources to either call or just get a hold of. I was 7 years old when I first started smoking cigarettes, off and on throughout my school years. I would smoke when I could. I knew it wasn't good for me, but I was addicted at that point, even though how young I was. I didn't know the word addiction, but I knew what it felt like. So when I moved down here to Butte in 2021, I slowly started to quit. And eventually I do not smoke cigarettes anymore. And it was the best decision I have ever made. Um, and I highly recommend quitting coming from a former smoker and vapor. Traditional tobacco. This plant contains no added chemicals or additives, which keeps it pure and holy. Although a lot of native tribes view this plant as sacred, it depends on the region in which it came from and which tribe is using it. After first contact in the 1400s, tobacco was brought back to Europe from the Americas. From there, this plant made its debut throughout the world within a few decades. Columbus and his crew kept records of tobacco use by Native Americans. These reports were soon found to be less reliable, which I am not surprised. But within those records, he did mention the gifts they were greeted with by the indigenous people when they first came to this land, which included fruit, food, tools, and dried leaves of tobacco plant. It wasn't until Columbus landed in the New World that physicians from different countries studied the plant and discovered different medicinal properties. For example, they found out that the leaves were applied to wounds to, to relieve the pain. Just like how every tribe is different, so are our views on things. During my research, I found that Native American tribes respected the tobacco plant so much that they used it mainly in ceremonies or for protection or an offering. That was considered medicine to us. Growing up, I was always reminded that tobacco is an offering and an important part of prayer. If I see an eagle or and I happen to have like a cigarette or something or like tobacco, I'll leave some for them. Um, or before we take anything from nature, such as berries, we before we begin like berry picking, we say a little prayer and we give thanks because these are gifts, and we dig a little hole in the ground and we put a pinch of tobacco in there before we begin gathering. And we just kind of pat it and then we start to gather. This is because for thousands of years, Native people were taught that everything we have here on Earth are gifts. And what Mother Earth offers us is a privilege, not a right. Indigenous people look through a lens where as if everything has a spirit. And to fully understand the reason um, why it can be considered sacred, can be led back to stories that have been passed down for centuries. In those stories are teachings and lessons, and just like how every tribe is different, the significance can vary also. The Juanita tribe in New York has a story that talks about strange beings appearing on a canoe, paddling down a river towards their village, and a voice told the villagers to go home, but the next day you have to go out and go destroy those beings. And so the warriors, they went out and they found the beings and they fought them and they ultimately killed them. And those warriors, they took those bodies and they put them in a pile and they burned them because they didn't know how else to dispose of them. So they burned them, and because that's what that voice told them to do also, is to go and burn them. So after that, the tobacco plants grew from where those strange beings burned. And that's one story. There's tribes in Minnesota, the Ojibwe. They have a story about the first being to walk this earth. He asked he asked Creator, "How will the humans communicate with you, Creator?" And then a voice said, "I will be the one. I will sacrifice myself." And the first being looked around and he seen that voice was coming from the tobacco plant. So they associate that sacrifice that tobacco plant gave for us to communicate with Creator. So that kind of incorporates with prayers. So you can see there's even more stories of different characters using tobacco as a gift or an offering. It all depends on the tribe. During my little exploration of understanding why tribes found tobacco to be so holy, I stumbled across an article from the Oregon Public Broadcasting website that was titled "Once Was Lost for Good, Native Americans Prize Tobacco Back in Oregon." That was written on November 21st of 2023. The tribe this plant traditionally belongs to is the Confederate tribes of Coos, Lower Umpqua, and Susla Indians. It was explained that a botanist named David Douglas was intrigued when he happened to quote unquote discover the tobacco plant along the Columbia River. He initially stole the plant after he was already denied of taking seeds. So, to be petty, he stole more seeds than what he was intending to steal. He was caught, but he was able to trade other goods and get away with the seeds, going back to London with them. It was not until 2017 when a team of botanists located the species home to the PNW tribes in um, it was in Poland. The hunt for the traditional plant was long over. Another article regarding lost tobacco comes from the Visit Northwestern Montana page. This article explained how the Kootenai tribe had multiple crops of tobacco growing in what is now known as Libby, Montana. It's in the northwestern corner of Montana. Eyewitness accounts credit this vast expansion and dissipation of the tobacco plant. These species, this species plant is now labeled as extinct because it can no longer be found in the area or anywhere in the world. I chose these articles because it really ties in with our next topic, which is a very beloved tree to the tribes of the Pacific Northwest, which is the cedar tree. This tree is considered sacred because not only do Native Americans associate it with ceremonies and prayer, but this tree was considered a lifeline to the indigenous tribes to the Pacific Northwest. Here is a list of cedar trees. I'm just going to go one by one and um, kind of list off where these trees can be found because they're all over the world. The deodar cedar is native to the Himalayas. Northern white cedar is found in southeast Canada, towards New England and the Great Lakes of Minnesota. Eastern white cedar can be found in the eastern states of America and Canada. Western red cedar is the home to the West Coast along the Pacific Northwest as far inland as the western part of Montana. Spanish cedar is located in the Caribbean, Central America, and South America. Cypress cedar is native to Cyprus, a country right off of Lebanon. Alaska cedar can be found along the coast of Alaska down to California. Atlas cedar are found in Morocco in the Atlas Mountains. Lebanon cedar is native to the eastern Mediterranean. Incense cedar are located in the Cascade and the Sierra Mountains in Nevada. Oriental or Breviate can be found in Eastern Asia. Port Orford cedar habitats northwestern California and southwestern Oregon. Okay, so growing up, I remember being told creator or I remember being told cedar is like holy water for us Buccaneers. So I took that as um as a protection so that I associated cedar as it'll keep me safe. The Cherokee tribe has a creation story about how during the beginning, people did not, they couldn't decide if they wanted sunlight or nighttime all day long. They learned hard lessons, and one of them is you cannot sustain life without daylight. Many people perished during the night times, and the Creator felt sorry for those who have lost their lives. He took those spirits and he placed them into what is now known as the cedar tree. And he told the Cherokee people, he told them that if every time they see or smell the aroma of cedar, it is their ancestors that is with them. The Lakota tribe, they favored the flat cedar because of the sweet scent it let off and also because it was used in ceremonies and prayer. The Blackfeet, Cheyenne, Grovon, and Crow tribes all used eastern red cedar. This cedar grows east of the divide. The Blackfeet made tea to stop vomiting, arthritis mixture, and relieve backaches. Cheyenne made a remedy to help calm active individuals, like hyperactive individuals, and ease childbirth. They would also make teas and cedar from cedar that helped with colds and pneumonia. The Grovon would mix the leaves and roots and apply it to the wounds to control bleeding. The Crow drank the tea to stop diarrhea and to stop lung hemorrhaging, and the woman drank the tea to cleanse and heal after childbirth. Those um, those are just some of the healing properties that I've found. I'm sure there are a lot more. Tribes that lived along the Pacific Northwest coast utilized the land as Creator has intended it in order to survive. Part of this survival involves the cedar tree, the western cedar tree to be exact. This and they also use yellow cedar tree. This tree this grew west of the divide. The Tulalip tribe's creation story involves the Creator gifting this tree to people and to serve them throughout their lives. Because of its importance to the coastal tribes, oftentimes this tree is honored with prayer because every part of this tree is used. Just like how the Plains Indians utilized every piece of the buffalo, as do the coastal natives with the cedar tree. Tribes along the Pacific coast relied and respected the cedar trees so much that some tribes actually referred to themselves as people of the cedar. Weaving and basket making is a very important part of coastal tribes' traditional values. The expertise of weaving and basket weaving was considered a requirement to the tribes because without that knowledge, you cannot uphold a household. Each basket provides a service to the community of that tribe. A basket can be made for catching fish, holding water, or even a basket for prayer. The coastal tribes fashioned clothing out of cedar tree bark rather than animal skins. These cedar clothes were designed to shed water and to provide warmth. There are specific robes that tribal leaders wear on the Pacific Northwest, and every tribe along the coast has its own name for these robes. What makes these robes so unique is how it is made. It is handcrafted piece of clothing from weaving cedar wrapped in wool in individual strands. Most of the time, yellow cedar is used during this process because of how fine the fibers in the tree are. Cedar bark pulling is also a very traditional tool used in cedar bark crafts. There are different techniques and prayer when it comes to this practice, but this practice is necessary for tribal members. I watched somebody actually do bark pulling from cedar tree, and they start from from where we are, but then it just keeps going up and up and up the tree. It's pretty fascinating to watch that. But canoes are also another part of the cedar tree tradition. I had the opportunity to actually spend time along the greater Seattle area and live next to the peninsula in Linwood, Washington. This body of water was home to what is known as the canoe journey. This is a traditional event that happens in the summertime. Um, as I was visiting my friends on the Tulalip Reservation, their family invited our family to their canoe launching. As everyone was loading, I found myself grabbing a paddle as well, and the boat was huge. It was able to hold around 20 people, if not more. It was black, red, and white, and it had a really cool coastal tribal design on the side. Each person had a paddle, and my friend told me just to keep pulling. I wasn't sure what pulling meant until we started to go, and that's just the act of like rowing, but they call it pulling. It makes sense though when you're going down with the canoe, you can actually feel yourself pull yourself down the down the water. But as we were all sitting there pulling, in the silence, a young boy started to sing, and it was beautiful. And the act of working together on this canoe was a powerful feeling that I can't seem to explain. It was it was like I was in a ceremony or something. It was like that's how powerful it felt. I was also taught during this time on the coast, I was taught about cedar bundles that coincide with like our medicine bags. Um, we laid out our cedar bundles and they were like cedar branches. They were laid faced open and we sprinkled different herbs on them and kept a positive vibe. As we were finished, we rolled them up and we just wrapped it with yarn. That was back in 2017. And I still have mine at my parents' house. It's still hanging up. The time that I lived in on the Pacific Northwest gave me the opportunity to explore cultures, especially natives outside the Plains region. This past summer, my manager and I, we were able to go to Tulalip, Washington for the National Opioid Conference. It was there I was reminded how vastly different natives can be from each other, but still hold the same values and respect for all living things. So the spiritual teachings that this tree holds are very significant. I am not a tribal coastal member, but because I understand the meaning of spiritual and traditional values of plants, I very much respect this tree also, and I look at it through a coastal lens. This gives me a new perspective and it allows me to appreciate this tree even more. On this slide, I've added pictures of the Pacific Northwest craftsmanship. The picture of the canoe is a little smaller than the one I rode in, but this one is still very much huge. These canoes are passed down through generations, so they're generational canoes. I can't remember how old the one I was riding in, but I know it was like 3 or 4 generations down, so it had to be a couple hundred years old. Um, the basket, the Lummi cedar basket, this is just an example of the amazing skills and beauty that goes into basket weaving. And finally, a picture of the inside of a longhouse. These were traditional housing and ceremonial housing for tribal members. Instead of teepees that were made up of animal hides, coastal tribes made houses out of cedar planks. Another reason why cedar is called the tree of life. So, in conclusion, tobacco and cedar, although completely different, still hold traditional value to Native American people. The Native perspective on plants should be taken into consideration whenever handling traditional plants or herbs or trees. Native people believe these plants have spirits and they are a gift from Creator. The reason why I want to add this slide is because we can all learn something from plants, and you do not have to be native or from a certain tribe in order to give the respect these plants deserve. Thank you. Okay, so that is the end of our um, the herbal presentation. These next slides, I will be going over carrying contacts, our March events, and um, also to let you guys know what is coming up in our March presentation. So for our caring contacts, BNWC would like to offer our culturally centered text message service program that is clinically proven to improve mental health. We only require your name or number, no other information is needed, and you will receive a message every 2 weeks for 6 months. But you can also opt out anytime. You do not need to be native to sign up. It's available for everyone. And at the end of 6 months, you'll be asked to take a quick survey that will just help us improve the program. And if you are interested in that, you can you can either call our center, ask for me specifically, Terryn, or you can email me. As I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we hold weekly and monthly events. Here is a list of dates and times. I'm just going to go over and do a quick summary of what we all hold here. So our weekly event is our beading workshop. This allows the public to learn a new hobby. We provide all the materials. All you need to do is show up. We also partnered with the Butte Historic Clark Chateau Museum and Gallery to host quarterly beading workshops also. That will be here in a few months. We just had our last one this February. We There is a gardening series, Planting Three Sisters. Three Sisters consist of corn, beans, and squash, which is, I know the Iroquois. They're really big on the Iroquois tribe. So that is a new kind of series that is starting up, also along with a new series starting. It's our program, Indigenous Meal Pickup Kit, that happens every Thursday. No qualifications needed. Um, all you need to do is just fill out a survey and you get a free Indigenous meal for that feeds from 4 to 6 servings with all fresh ingredients also. With our longest running monthly events, um, that is our drumming circle and our separate stories. Our drumming circle is hosted by Kim Boyle, who is a member of the Little Shell tribe. It's like a prayer circle. It can be very moving as I attend every month to support Kim. Supper and Stories is run by myself and the registered dietitian, Amy. Each month we feature a different tribe. For January, we featured the Navajo tribe. This month for February, we are doing the Cherokee tribe. Um, and what we do is I find different stories from the tribe that correlate with our traditional meal. And this meal is also served with the My Native Plate intended, which is a food guide to portion control and healthy habits that is native centered. BNWC also started a book club that creates a connection through culture and literature, and this is done by featuring Indigenous authors and books relating to Native people. And finally, my presentations on traditional herb medicines are on the third Friday of every month from 2 to 4. I just want to say thank you for listening to me today. Our March's presentation will be focused on Mullen and Beirut/OSHA. Right now, I am currently just going through our herbs list and what we feature here at the herbal pharmacy. But if there's any other herb that you would want me to go into further detail about, you can email me and let us know what you would like to see. So thank you again.